after a woman's husband passed away, leaving her a widow. You'll be shocked to find out what her daughter did next. It's a story of struggle, compassion, and an unexpected turn of events. You won't believe what happened. Watch till the end to find out the full story. And if you enjoy the video, please give it a like. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. Let's get started. Once upon a time, there was a 12-year-old girl named Daniela. Was only 12 years old when her world turned upside down. She lived with her mother and older brother in a modest home built by her late father. Their family had been happy once, but everything changed when Daniela's father suddenly passed away at the age of 35. He had been the sole provider, working tirelessly in a private company to ensure his family had a good life. His unexpected death left them in deep sorrow, but even worse, it left them struggling to survive. At just 27, Daniela's mother found herself alone with 2 children, unsure of how she would feed them. The company where her husband had worked gave them only 3 million naira, about $2,000, as compensation. It was far from enough. At first, neighbors and relatives came with words of sympathy, but as time passed, they slowly disappeared. No one came to help, and soon Daniela's family was left to face their struggles alone. Her mother did everything she could to stretch the little money they had. She cut down on expenses, sold whatever they didn't need, and tried to make ends meet. But within 10 months, the money was gone, and they had nothing left. With no other choice, Daniela's mother made a painful decision. She would have to leave home and find work. She knew it would not be easy, but she had no other way to support her children. Daniela watched her mother leave early in the morning and return home late at night. She worked as a maid in 3 different houses, cleaning and cooking just to earn 40,000 naira, about $26 a month. But even with this, it was never enough. Half of her earnings went towards school fees, leaving very little for food and bills. Some days there was barely anything to eat. Daniela saw the worry in her mother's eyes, but she tried to stay strong for her family. Days turned into weeks, and their situation only got worse. There were nights when Daniela and her brother went to bed hungry. Her mother, exhausted from work, often cried silently when she thought they were asleep. Daniela tried to focus on her studies, but hunger made it hard. She felt weak and tired, and her once bright eyes lost their sparkle. One morning, Daniela sat in class, her stomach empty for the 2nd day in a row. Her body felt heavy, and her vision blurred. She tried to concentrate, but everything around her seemed to fade. Just as the teacher began the lesson, she felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Her head slumped forward, and she struggled to keep her eyes open. Her teacher, Miss Halima, noticed something was wrong. She had always admired Daniela's dedication, but today she saw a different girl, pale, weak, and struggling to stay awake. Concerned, she walked over and gently asked, "Daniela, are you feeling okay?" Daniela hesitated but then whispered, "We have no food at home, miss. We haven't eaten for 2 days." Miss Halima's heart broke at those words. Without hesitation, she took Daniela to the staff room, handed some money to the school's watchman, and asked him to buy food. A few minutes later, he returned with warm bread, rice, and a bottle of milk. Miss Halima placed the food in front of Daniela and said, "Eat, my dear. You need your strength." Daniela was hesitant at first, but the moment she took a bite, she felt her body relax. The warm food filled her empty stomach, and the milk soothed her hunger pains. For the first time in days, she felt a little stronger. Miss Halima watched her eat with a gentle smile. After class, Miss Halima called Daniela to her office. "Daniela," she said softly, "I want to help you and your family. You don't have to worry about food anymore." Daniela looked up in shock. "But miss, why would you do that?" she asked. Miss Halima smiled. "Because I know how hard life can be, and no one should have to suffer alone." That evening, Miss Halima rode her bicycle to the market and bought rice, flour, sugar, and other essentials. She then carried the bags to Daniela's home. When she arrived, Daniela's mother wasn't home yet. She was still at work. Miss Halima placed the groceries in the kitchen and turned to Daniela. "From now on, I will bring food every month. You focus on your studies, okay?" Tears filled Daniela's eyes. She had never imagined that someone outside her family would care so much. That night, when her mother returned home and saw the food, she broke down in tears. "Who did this?" she asked. Daniela told her about Miss Halima's kindness. Her mother could barely believe it. "May God bless her," she whispered, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. From that day on, Miss Halima became more than just a teacher. She became a guiding light in Daniela's life. Every month, she made sure that Daniela's family had enough to eat. She even spoke to the school administration and arranged for Daniela's school fees to be covered. Slowly, Daniela's life began to change. With food no longer a daily worry, she was able to focus on her studies. Her grades improved, and she found herself dreaming of a better future. She worked harder than ever, determined to make something of herself. Miss Halima's kindness had given her hope, and she wanted to prove that she was worthy of that help. Years passed, and Halima's dedication paid off. She graduated at the top of her class and was awarded a full scholarship to study abroad. The day she received the letter, she ran home, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, I did it. I got a scholarship." Her mother, Mrs. Pamela, hugged her tightly, crying tears of joy. "I'm so proud of you, my daughter," she whispered. Daniela knew that her life was about to change forever. But no matter where she went, she promised herself one thing. She would never forget the kindness that saved her. She would make sure to help others, just as Miss Halima had helped her. Because in a broken world, kindness is the light that can heal even the deepest wounds. Daniela could hardly believe it. She was going to study abroad. It felt like a dream, something too big for a girl who once went to bed hungry. But it was real. The university had sent her a ticket, covered her tuition, and even provided living expenses. The years of struggle, the nights of hunger, and the tears of despair had all led to this moment. On the day of her departure, her mother and brother stood by her side at the airport, both with tears in their eyes. Daniela held them tightly, feeling the warmth of their love. "I promise you, Mama, I'll make you proud." With tears flowing from her eyes, she whispered. Her mother kissed her forehead. "You already have, my child." As the plane took off, Daniela gazed out of the window, thinking about everything she was leaving behind. She felt a mix of excitement and fear. This was a new beginning, but she knew she had a long road ahead. She reminded herself of Miss Halima's words. "Work hard, and never forget where you came from." When she arrived at the university, everything felt overwhelming. The tall buildings, the foreign language, and the unfamiliar faces. But she knew why she was here. She had come to learn, to grow, and to build a future for herself and her family. She was determined to make the most of this opportunity. Life at the university was different from anything Daniela had ever known. The classrooms were modern, the teachers were kind, and for the first time in her life, she didn't have to worry about food. She could eat whenever she wanted, and the dormitory provided everything she needed. It was a luxury she had never experienced before. But even with all these comforts, she couldn't forget about her family. Every month she sent money back home to her mother. "Mama, please stop working as a maid," she wrote in a letter. "You've done enough. Let me take care of you now." At first her mother resisted, but eventually she agreed. For the first time in years, she could rest. Daniela also never forgot about Miss Halima. She wrote her long letters, telling her about her studies and the new world she was discovering. "Because of you, I am here," she wrote. "One day, I will return and help others the way you helped me." Miss Halima's reply was always the same. "I am proud of you, my child. Keep shining." As the months passed, Daniela worked even harder. She took on a part-time job at the university, earning extra money to send home. Slowly, life became easier for her family. Her mother was able to renovate their house, buy new furniture, and finally live without worry. The family that once struggled to eat was now living with dignity. Years later, Daniela finally completed her degree. She had worked harder than she ever imagined, and it had paid off. She was offered a prestigious job in Nigeria, with a salary beyond her wildest dreams. It was more than enough to provide for her family, to give them the life they had always deserved. Before leaving for her new job, Daniela returned home. It had been years since she had seen her mother and brother, and the moment she stepped into their home, she felt a wave of emotion. The house was different, renovated, warm, and full of life. But what touched her most was the look in her mother's eyes. "You did it, Daniela," she said, holding her daughter's face in her hands. "You changed our lives." Daniela smiled through her tears. "I couldn't have done it without Miss Halima," she said. "I need to see her." The next day she made her way to her old school, but when she arrived, she received heartbreaking news. Miss Halima had left the school a year ago. No one knew where she was. Daniela felt a sense of urgency. She had to find her. After asking around and searching for days, she finally got an address. When she reached Miss Halima's home, she was shocked. The woman who had once saved her life was now struggling herself. Miss Halima looked frail, and Daniela could tell that life had been difficult for her. Tears filled Daniela's eyes as she stepped inside. "Miss Halima," she said softly, holding the hands that had once given her food. "I came to thank you." Miss Halima smiled weakly. "You don't need to thank me, child. Seeing you succeed is enough." But Daniela knew it wasn't enough. Miss Halima had sacrificed so much for others, and now it was her turn to give back. She immediately arranged for medical care, ensured that Miss Halima had food and supplies, and even hired someone to take care of her. "You saved me," Daniela told her. "Now let me take care of you." Miss Halima's daughter, a kind and intelligent young woman, had been helping her mother as best as she could. Daniela's mother took an instant liking to her. "She is a good girl," her mother said one day. "She would make a wonderful wife." A few months later, with both families in agreement, Daniela's brother married Miss Halima's daughter. The two families, once connected by kindness, were now bound by love. Miss Halima, once a teacher to Aisha, had become part of her family. The woman who had once fed a hungry child was now surrounded by people who cared for her. As Daniela prepared to leave for her new job, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life had come full circle. She had once been a girl struggling to survive, but now she had the power to help others. She made a promise to herself. She would dedicate her life to giving back, to helping those who, like her, only needed one act of kindness to change their destiny. In a world full of suffering, kindness was the light that guided people out of darkness. Daniela had seen it firsthand, and now she would continue the cycle, ensuring that no child would have to suffer the way she once had. This story is a testament to the power of kindness and perseverance. Even in the darkest of times, a single act of compassion can change a life. Daniela's journey proves that no matter how broken the world may seem, kindness can heal and hope can rise from even the deepest struggles.